Hey, thanks for joining us here on the Action News 5 digital desk here on Facebook here early on a Sunday morning. First Alert meteorologist Patrick Ellis here with you. Dark and early, bright and early, however you want to shake it here this morning, of course, as we start off here on a Sunday, which is a First Alert weather day across the Mid-South. A lot of stuff going on here in short order. We've got to talk about, what we are starting off this morning. And we've been mentioning the last couple of days that the weather would likely not be impactful through the morning hours. So if you've got plans here, time right now, 9:17 on a Sunday morning, you're about to head off to church, you're in decent shape to go to church. Memphis Showboats, they have their home opener, season opener over at Simmons Bank Liberty Stadium. We've had a few isolated showers here and there this morning, but other than that, again, we are in good shape to at least start off. But by the end of the day, a different story may be unfolding. As a look at satellite and radar, we're starting to see that storm system back to the west of us beginning to make progress in our direction. And of course, starting to see the winds beginning to pick up off of the Gulf. And to the west of us, we'll be seeing that cold front getting closer and closer to the Mid-South as we head through the early evening hours. And that'll be the time frame to watch out for. But already this morning, we've been watching some instances of sunshine coming back into the fold. That's going to be something else that will be part of the story here, because as the sunshine breaks out, that only destabilizes the atmosphere further. And one thing that you will also notice as you're walking out the door, obviously we had some rain yesterday, it's very muggy. The humidity levels are quite high. We started off this morning in the upper 60s in many spots, and from there it's only going to be up and away when it comes down to our temperatures across the Mid-South. Of course, the First Alert weather day from the late Sunday storms, a reminder, again, these will be later on today. So again, if you're about to head out the door, you got to do some shopping here shortly. You got to go to church. You got to go to get some errands done here on the Sunday morning. I think you're in good shape. It's just going to be this evening that you need to be keeping an eye on the potential for strong and severe thunderstorms coming into play. That's the latest update from the SPC, the Storm Prediction Center. What they did this morning was expand out the slight risk, the enhanced risk area, the level 3 out of 5 risk area as we go through the next couple of hours. And I think that that's going to be kind of a heads up that they may try to shoehorn in a larger risk that would be a moderate level 4 out of 5 risk that would probably include at least a part of the Action News 5 coverage area as we go through the latter portion of the day. So a reminder, again, this is not going to be a daytime thing necessarily. I'd say that if you are thinking between now and lunchtime, you're okay. If you're thinking like noontime to 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I think you're okay. It's after like 4 or 5 that we start to see the storms beginning to flare up in northeast central Arkansas. And then they start to make their way into the Mid-South as we get closer to 5 and 6 o'clock this evening. So that's when we need to be on awareness, and more than likely by that point in time, we'll be underneath some type of watch. I'd say we'll probably be underneath some type of watch, meaning watch out for the storms sometime this afternoon. So be prepared that there'll probably be a tornado watch or severe thunderstorm watch that's going to be issued from the National Weather Service later on this afternoon, but not this morning. Again, this morning we're in decent shape. So let's take a look at our First Alert Futurecast. Look at the time frame here. That's 3 p.m. 3 p.m. Not much going on. Actually, there'll be a fair amount of sunshine across the Mid-South. Notice to the north and west, though, if you look back west of Harrisburg and Jonesboro and Paragould, you start to see some storms beginning to flare up. And actually, if I'm not mistaken, this may be the latest data that just came in. So we're going to step through this together when it comes down to it. And you'll notice those storms quickly advancing eastward and quickly growing and maturing over portions of northeastern Arkansas. The other thing to note here is that these cells will be more individualized, meaning that they'll be more supercellular in structure. They will be supercellular in the standpoint of that they will be kind of on their own. Eventually, all of this will meld together and become more of a squall line situation, but it will take a couple of hours for that to happen. 6 p.m. this evening, storms start marching their way into the Action News 5 coverage area. So we did expand the time frame out a little bit to include this idea. And notice we go towards 8 o'clock in the evening, and that first batch of storms moves off towards the east. Now the question mark here is how robust those storms will still be as they move off towards the east, and ultimately how does this all play out for the end of the night, because there's still going to be a cold front that's got to move through the area. That will bring us some more storm opportunities as we head towards the early evening hours, and should be out of here by the morning commute tomorrow. That still looks to be the going rate for us, is that by tomorrow morning's commute, you will have nothing to worry about and will be in a quieter scenario playing out for us during that time frame. I'm going to circle back to this here in a couple of minutes, but actually let me go back to it, and we'll actually go back and look at it again, kind of time this out once again. So again, that's about 3 o'clock this afternoon, and you will likely be dealing with sunshine. I said this earlier this week. I was joking, but I'm not really joking when I say this. There's going to be somebody in the comments somewhere in the Mid-South who said, you got it wrong again, weatherman. I'm tired of you telling me it's going to storm all day. Well, we've told you all week long that this would not be an all-day situation. This has been primarily an evening event that would likely last into the overnight period. So a lot of today will be warm, variably cloudy, breezy, and that just sets the stage up for the potential for storms. And I've said this before when it comes down to storm opportunities, you know, the potential is there. That means that we have the ingredients for the potential for strong and severe thunderstorms. That does not make it a certainty. And you want to hope that the certainty does not happen over your backyard or in your neighbor's backyard or anywhere nearby to you. You know, we had those storms last week. Thankfully, we got out of that one without much fanfare. The storms were more impactful to the south of us. The week prior to that, the storms were more impactful to the north and west and to the south and east of us, and we got spared in between, even though that we still had some impacts. We had 2 small tornadoes that touched down here in the Mid-South. But just outside the Action News 5 coverage area, a nearly EF5 tornado went through Diaz, Arkansas, one county outside of the coverage area. So you got to understand that, you know, when we are looking at the overreaching theme, what happened 2 weeks ago was 2 weeks ago. And that system was encompassing the entire Action News 5 coverage area. The same environment that happened in Diaz was the same environment that happened here. Same thing for last week. You know, the same environment that happened with storms down to the south that were pretty active with wind and hail, even a tornado that moved through Rolling Fork, Mississippi. That same environment was sitting right on top of the Action News 5 coverage area. So the environment is conducive for it. Doesn't mean that the storms will latch onto it. Let's hope that's the case. Let's hope that we don't have anything too wild to deal with here today, but you got to be prepared for the potential for storms that could be rolling through the area later on this evening. So take a look at, again, the hour-by-hour First Alert Futurecast, showing the line of storms moving across the Mid-South as we head towards the latter portion of the day. And again, most folks will get through this without much fanfare. You get towards 6 o'clock, we'll be watching for the storms coming across eastern Arkansas. Step this forward, again, that line continues to trek eastward as we head into the early evening hours, and then eventually moving over towards the Tennessee River Valley. And then we'll get the storm system out of here by tomorrow morning's commute. So again, tomorrow morning, you're in decent shape when it comes down to it. So do want to give you a little light at, you know, if you're maybe heading to the Showboats game here. I don't think the weather's going to be half bad. You'll see my face up there on the Jumbotron as we are a sponsor for the Showboats this year, and also Simmons Bank Liberty Stadium at Gate 5. But I tell you, the weather should be pretty nice for this afternoon, late this morning into the early afternoon. There might be a still stray shower, but temperatures well up into the 70s. Circling back to the storm threats, and again, understand, not all storms are going to be severe. Not all storms will be strong. Some will come through and you'll be like, oh, that wasn't bad. And then maybe a storm that's maybe about 20 miles to your north could be a bit more active, could have some warnings associated with it. And we do expect that there will probably be some warnings being issued for the Mid-South. But not everybody will see warnings, okay? But the potential for damaging winds, large hail, and the potential for a tornado can't be ruled out. Now, I also want to emphasize this. When we talk about tornadoes, they could come in 2 different realms. From the standpoint that the individual cells flare up this afternoon into the early evening hours, those storms will have a bit more rotation to work with in the atmosphere. So the initial storms will probably be the strongest storms. So wherever they flare up and probably an hour or 2 away from their initiation point will probably be the worst of it. Then moving forward, as it congeals into a line of storms, it would be more so the strong wind potential, hail potential, flooding potential, brief spin-up tornado risk. All the while, the potential is there, but that doesn't mean certainty. So just keep in the back of your mind that not everything across the Mid-South. So a couple of things to remind you of. You know how this goes. We live in the Mid-South. We live in Memphis. A lot of us live in Memphis in Shelby County. MLGW will do you dirty every single time. Just don't be surprised if the power gets jiggled a little bit this afternoon, even with a good gust of wind. Yesterday we had about 8,000 homes and businesses without power, and it was just barely raining yesterday. So go ahead and take the time now to charge up your devices. Take the time now, iPad, iPhone, Android, whatever, and go ahead and get your devices charged up. Have multiple reliable sources of information. Now, I know everybody's got their own favorite person that they like to watch. It doesn't have to be me. It doesn't have to be Ron. It doesn't have to be Eric. It can be anybody. I get that. You know, we're happy that many of you are joining us here this morning, and you trust us enough to be one of your reliable sources of information. I'm talking like the National Weather Service in Memphis. Everybody in the Action News 5 coverage area is covered by the National Weather Service in Memphis, Tennessee. They're a great follow to get other information. I mean, obviously, their specific thing is to forecast for our area as well as what we do as well. They're the ones issuing the warnings, the watches, and things of that nature. Your local EMA directors. So if you, or your local EMA office, so Emergency Management Agency, those offices, your sheriff's departments in your counties, those are another great place to get information, not just from the standpoint of weather, but also from the standpoint of other things going on in your community. So again, you know, when we talk about social media, and we're on Facebook right now, I'll get on my rant about Facebook. Don't use Facebook specifically as your primary sources of information. The way the algorithm works, some of you are going to watch this right now, watching us live. It's 9:28 in the morning on a Sunday. It's March the 30th, 2025. Some of you may watch this on April the 30th, 2025. That's how the Facebook algorithm works. I don't have any control over that. So when it comes down to pertinent weather information, when it comes down to warnings and things of that nature, do not rely on that specifically, okay? Don't rely on social media specifically, but have multiple ways to get weather information and know what to do and what to do and where to go in the warning process. If you get put underneath a tornado warning, do you know your safe place? Do you know where to go? You know, we stopped doing county-based warnings almost 20 years ago, and some folks think that, you know, when the warning sirens go off, that I have to get to a safe place. Well, we've been chopping up warnings for almost 20 years now to be more specific to the county area. Good example of that, and I don't know why, I don't have the answers to this. Last week we had a tornado warning for far northern Shelby County, but the sirens went off across the entire county, including here in Midtown. People were freaking out because they're like, well, it's sunny outside. I'm driving from downtown and I hear the sirens downtown. People were walking around like, what's going on? The storm was 25 miles to the north, moving through Millington. Millington needed to know what's going on, but the county sirens went off. So again, you can't necessarily rely on the county sirens. They'll sound, but sometimes the county sirens in certain counties will go off for the entire county. Others will do it for portions of the county, depending on where they are in relation to the storm. So it's very piecemeal on that, and each county has different guidelines on that. Obviously, if a tornado warning goes out for Shelby County, the entire county is going to go off. So that's when you need to tune in and say, okay, is it my part of the county that's underneath the warning? And for the vast majority of Shelby County last Sunday, it was not part of their county. It was up in Millington. Yeah, I know we got about 25,000 people who live up in Millington. And yes, that was a pertinent warning for you guys that you needed to know about. That's why you had heard the warning sirens. But if you were in Bartlett, or if you were in Germantown or Collierville or Midtown Memphis or downtown Memphis or South Memphis, Whitehaven, and you heard the warning sirens go off, you're like, I don't know what's going on. So again, when you hear the sirens go off, that's the cue to turn on the TV to see exactly where the storm is coming to, okay? So just knowing what you do in those situations. The last thing you want to do is get to that point in time where you get a warning to flare up and you don't know where to go or where to be. So you always want to go through that severe weather action plan. You know, you never want to have to implement it, but it's best to have that information so you and family know what to do. Sound minds make sound decisions. So if you're freaking out at 10 o'clock at night, y'all have been asleep and all of a sudden you hear the warning sirens going off and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. You may not really realize what's happening. So again, just go ahead and take those precautions. Remember, we're headlong into the severe weather season here in the Mid-South. We've had two different severe weather situations just in the last couple of weeks. I will tell you, we've got another one that's coming up here in the mid portion of the week, and then it leads up to a flood threat, and we'll get to that here in a second. But understand that, we are in the Mid-South. This is typical for us. This time of the year, we typically see severe weather. So again, one way to stay up to date with the very latest anytime and everywhere on the Action News 5 First Alert Weather app, download it in the Google Play Store and the Apple App Store. Speaking to that next risk, again, the potential for flood concerns come into play by the end of this week. And oddly enough, we'll probably have another storm system that will come through the area that will feature strong winds, potential for severe weather late Wednesday into Thursday. So I'm giving you that heads up now that we could have to do this whole process over again in the mid portion of the week. And not to mention, it's not just the potential for strong storms that we will have for 2 days in a row, late Wednesday and then again on Thursday, but the potential for flooding concerns come into play with that as well. So when you look at the extended forecast, there's a lot happening on there. So I'll try to time this out. Obviously, today, the first alert weather day, that is the big impact. Again, the main time frame, the hours that you would need to start kind of being more in tune with the weather at 5 o'clock newscast tonight. Tune in with us. Hopefully we don't have to see you before then, but again, make sure you tune in tonight at 5 o'clock. Chief Meteorologist Ron Childers, as well as Meteorologist Eric Burrell, they will be in the studio here tonight to track the storms, okay? Take you through the overnight period. Tomorrow, fine. Get to work, good. No problems. No issues at school tomorrow. A little cooler. Wind's going to come out of the north and west. Temperatures stuck in the upper 50s and low 60s there. We'll rebound quickly to the 70s, but I do want to highlight again that the potential for storms in play for Wednesday. This is the SBC outlook for Wednesday. Notice anything similar from what we've seen the last couple of days? Yeah, another risk for strong and severe thunderstorms, an enhanced level 3 out of 5 risk in play for Wednesday. Guess what? There's a day 5 risk as well for the potential for storms on Thursday. And I wish I could get the computer. There we go. And there's a slight risk that's involved for Thursday. So a very active period of time that will also lead up to flood concerns, because guess what? Notice how beyond Wednesday, there's a daily chance for rain. Some of the rain's going to come down heavily. There's a lot of moisture coming in across the areas. This front gets pinned down, stalled overhead. And unfortunately, that's going to lead up to the potential for flood concerns as we head towards the middle and latter portion of the week. So a lot happening here in short order, friends. I'm going to go through and just kind of look at some of the comments really quickly and just kind of work our way through this. But needless to say, when it comes down to the potential for strong storms, this is not off the charts. It's something that we deal with. Just want to give you that heads up, that first alert to what's happening. And then we will move on from there. And again, the weather does quiet down for at least 2 days, and then we have another round of storms to contend with potentially as we head through the latter portion of the day. So again, potential for strong storms late today into early tomorrow. Again, the morning commute should be fine, no problems there. Then we get into the mid portion of next week, and we got to deal with another round of storms across the region. So stay weather aware, up to date with the very latest across the Mid-South. I see a lot of people who are angry. I get it. Listen, we are here to cover 28 counties in the Mid-South. It's not just your backyard. It's everybody's backyard. So remember that when we are talking about potential for severe weather, it's not for every single backyard. And you want to hope that it's not your backyard. Because, with everything going on, the last thing you want to deal with is trees down in your backyard, storm damage. We've had some pretty rough storms here across the Mid-South. The last couple of times we've been lucky, to say the least. As I mentioned, it was not but 2 weeks ago we had almost EF5 tornado move across Poinsett County. It was 10 miles to the west of Poinsett County. That environment was right on top of us. Last week, we got lucky again with another storm that came rolling across the Mississippi River. That storm arguably was a wind and hail threat. And I think today, really and truly on the front side, front facing on this, is that we will be talking about the potential for wind and hail primarily, but then there's that potential for a tornado. It is what it is. That's the way the atmosphere is giving, what the atmosphere is giving us today. And so we just have to be prepared for it nonetheless. Somebody asked, how do I stay grounded and calm during severe weather? I've been doing this too long, and I've seen too much. But needless to say, we are here to keep you guys calm during severe weather situations. When it happens, yeah, obviously things get a little jumbled up. We're having conversations back and forth. What you see on television is live. It's not something that is pre-recorded or anything like that. So when, maybe me and Ron are talking, or me and Eric are talking, or whoever is in the Weather Center talking, it can be a little jumbled up because, we're trying to talk about certain things of certain aspects of a storm or something of that nature. And sometimes it can get a little muddled, but we have to reset. And sometimes that's what we all have to do, is just reset. And that's, I think, what we have to do here today. It's just reset our mindset. It's Sunday. It's 9:38 in the morning. We've got probably about another 6 hours before any storms even start to get going. And like I said, between now and then, we're probably going to see some sunshine. We're probably going to see the warm breezes. You'll probably think, hey, maybe I go outside and for a walk. That's not a bad idea. Take the calm walk around the block and do things like that. Somebody said, what time do you say it starts for us? It depends on where you are. I think for eastern Arkansas, between 4 and 7 p.m., I think for kind of the Highway 51 corridor, the metro area, we're talking between 7 and 10 p.m. and then between 9 and 11 p.m. for our easternmost communities heading out towards the Tennessee River. So places like Corinth and Ripley, Mississippi, and Bolivar. But for places like Wynn, Mark Tree, Lepanto, down towards Forest City, I think your storm threat starts to increase anywhere after about 4 or 5 o'clock this afternoon as the storms start to flare up. But remember, this won't necessarily initially begin as a squall line. This is going to begin as individualized storms. So not everybody will see those storms, but once we get the squall line to, or at least a cluster of storms to move through the area, that's when we have that potential for more of a widespread issue, that more people would be involved with, like one warning or something like that. It's not going to be, again, everybody sees storms. Not everybody will see severe weather here tonight. And you want to thank your lucky stars that you don't end up with severe weather. If a warning goes out for your area, hey, that was just a heads up, and hopefully it doesn't come right over your backyard. But be prepared for the potential that, yeah, you might have to tangle with that. As much as we don't want to deal with that, it is kind of the way of life that we have to tangle with here in the Mid-South. So, with that being said, if a tornado does touch down in a specific area, how do you know where it will? The amazing thing about what we have now with Doppler radar is probably about 2013. We started implementing what we call dual polarization in the radars. It became a very big thing. We can see different things inside of storms to be able to determine, okay, this is exactly where it is. This is, or at least within a mile or two of where a tornado could be. If we see a debris signature popping up, you may have heard us talk about debris signatures, or TDSs, a tornadic debris signature. When those things pop up, you can say that's without a doubt, without a shadow of a doubt, that is probably a tornado on the ground and it's doing damage. Because at that point, you definitely know. You can track that. You can just take a track out from that and try to figure out where it's going to head. Not every storm is going to rotate. Not every storm is going to produce hail. Not every storm is going to produce lightning. But those storms that are able to do that, the atmosphere is there for it today. And I would even say large hail, especially on the initial batches of storms, that initial band of storms that flares up that will be more individualized, I think that's going to be a big hail potential today. And we're not talking about just like 1 inch hail or something like that. We're talking, some golf ball size hail, maybe even larger than that. And that will tend to be northeastern Arkansas, northwest Tennessee, in southern Missouri as we go through the latter half of this afternoon into the evening hours. A reminder, again, we were looking at the Skycam not terribly long ago, and we were seeing sunshine here in downtown and midtown. So the environment's priming itself for the potential as we head through the next little bit. Why is Chester County not in? That is the Jackson, Tennessee market. Listen, I always say this. If more people start watching us in other places, we have more of an opportunity to branch out into other locations. I don't set the television markets. Nobody at the station does either. That's determined above our heads and above our pay grade. We've gained and lost counties in our market for years now. I know at one point in time our market went all the way out to Jackson, and obviously over the last 20 years, it's contracted a lot and kind of been more centroid towards the city of Memphis. But we cover all the way up to southern Missouri and then also down south into North Mississippi as well. Brandon asks, we have a strong cap in place for most of the day, and that's it's like, I'll talk about the cap here for a second, and I'll wrap this up here shortly. But yeah, we do have a pretty strong cap in the atmosphere, which is a lid to kind of hold and suppress the thunderstorm development down. And I think that may be a mitigating factor in the overreaching theme for today. If we do have storms that are able to flare up, if you remember 2 weeks ago, I think it was the severe weather event 2 weeks ago, we had some storms that were flared up in North Mississippi. The cap was so strong, I mean, they were hitting the ceiling and just not being able to break through. And then eventually, as the night went on, the cap eroded, but we just didn't have anything really flaring up because there was nothing to trigger those storms at that point because the triggering mechanism had lifted off to the north. Today, the cap's strong during the day, but it's going to erode pretty quickly. And I think that the storms that are able to flare up over in north central Arkansas will likely break through the cap at some point. So that's a good question. Again, the cap is just a lid on the atmosphere to keep the thunderstorm development from happening. Basically, just a warm air layer just above our heads. And that's what's going to keep thunderstorm development from being very much an issue through the next several hours. And that's why you probably won't see very much in the way of storm development between now and about 3 or 4 o'clock this afternoon. Once that cap starts to erode or it finally breaks, that's when you'll probably see the quick development of strong and severe thunderstorms across north central Arkansas, southern Missouri. That will be the launch point for the storms, and then we'll see how they march across the area if they can survive the trip. If they can survive the trip all the way across the Mississippi River, which we do expect that to be the case. And with that, coming up on 9:45 here on a Sunday morning, it is March the 30th, 2025. I reemphasize the time because, again, like I said, Facebook's algorithm is going to always do something dirty, and it'll show up in your timeline probably in about 3 weeks' time. But we do have more storms on the way, as we mentioned, coming up for the weekend, of course, next week rather, and throughout much of next week, a flood threat that also emerges. You can find out all the details anytime and everywhere on the Action News 5 First Alert Weather app or on actionnews5.com. We will have more updates here on social media throughout the course of the day. Again, Chief Meteorologist Ron Childers will be in later on this afternoon, as well as Eric Brill. They will be tracking the storms tonight. I got to get some sleep because guess what? I got to be in dark and early on Monday morning so we can get going for everything going on this upcoming week. So again, stay weather aware, stay up to date. Again, things can and will likely change. We'll probably have another update from the SPC, see if they move around some things with the information. At 11:30 this morning, we'll have that update over on the Action News 5 weather app. And then as we go through this evening, we'll have updates periodically through the evening. As long as we don't have any tornado warnings active or severe thunderstorm warnings for Shelby County active for the coverage area, we will let you be on regular program. We know we do have some things that are brand new tonight. We understand that. Those things can wait. I mean, if we're knee-deep in tornado warnings, I think that takes precedent over whether or not you get to watch your show tonight. I understand that not everybody will be seeing storms, and you're probably like, why can't you figure out how to divvy up the areas? We're not at that portion of technology at this point. We're getting there slowly, but it takes time and a lot of money. And so, that's something that's down the road. And hopefully one of these days we'll be able to get there to be able to section off areas to say, okay, we'll do a tornado warning for this area versus this area. We're not there though, not yet. So I know that's a common question that a lot of people will say. All right, coming up 9:47. Have a great day. Enjoy your Sunday. Again, keep an eye to the sky, especially as we head into this evening, especially after about 3, 4 o'clock this afternoon. Probably by that point, we'll be either nearing a watch or have had a watch issued for the area, not a warning, a watch. And then after that, warnings would be the issue to watch out for the early evening hours.